Hey everyone, welcome to the video going over my cheat sheet and early look at the picks I'm looking at for week 1 of the NFL season. This is my first NFL video of the year. Very excited to get into NFL. It's the most popular sport by far. It's my favorite sport just from a fan standpoint. I love MLB, NASCAR, all that, but NFL is like, my true love. So very excited to get into NFL. And yeah, I'm sure you guys are too. So anyway, before we continue, if you could leave a like, subscribe channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out any of my new videos, I would really appreciate that. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you like access to my entire NFL sheet, I've been working on this thing all summer. It's got pretty much all the data you need on here. It's just fully loaded with everything. It's color coded. It's nice and neat. I'm going to be doing some tiered rankings. It's got projections on there. I'm going to be doing a lot of extra stuff on my Patreon. The link is in the description below for that. Now, the sheet's pretty much got everything on it. It's got the player info, the matchup, the game info, the Vegas totals, the pace they played at last year. I got 2018 stats at the moment that will transfer to 2019 stats, obviously when that becomes available, because right now there's no stats for 2019 season. So we got 2018 stats, got everything on there: QB rating, completion percentage, pass attempts per game, rushing attempts even, because guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, that's important for them. The DVOA versus position. I'm going to have the offensive line and defensive line matchups when that comes available per PFF. Draftkings points per game allowed, all this good stuff. The game info, the weather even. There's no weather info right now because that's 2 weeks away. But when that becomes available, that will be in there as well. Then we got the factors on there. Factors are right there. Then on the right, I do have the projections up on there right now, and I don't want to just give that out. So projections are on the right. I'm going to have tiered rankings. I'm going to do a lot of extra stuff on Patreon, maybe even a live stream where you can ask me all the questions you want. I do have a Slack chat where you can ask me all the questions you want or just hang out. We have Slack chats for MLB and all that, and it's a really good time in there, so I think you guys would enjoy it. And I'm sorry to sound like a long commercial, but this is my first video, so I just have to let you guys know what is all available. And if you click at the link in the description below, it'll take you here. And then if you just want NFL, you could select there, and then the whole sheet will become available to you per month. So just to get that out of the way, I'm sorry for it to being a long, drawn-out commercial, but I just wanted you guys to know what's available. I've been working on this all summer, and I'm just very excited to have it. I got it for the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defensive too, and then each thing has their own little tweaks to it. Like wide receivers will have the cornerback and wide receiver matchups and the advantage per PFF. Running backs have the same thing, all that kind of stuff. So lots of good stuff on there. Very excited. Now let's dive into the quarterback breakdown. I'm not going to talk about every single quarterback on here, but mainly the guys that I think are going to be DFS relevant this week when the week comes. So let's start with Patrick Mahomes up top at 7,200. And, it just makes a lot of sense coming off an amazing 2018 season and his first year as a full-time starter. He averaged 315 passing yards a game, nearly 3 touchdowns per game, and not to mention the highest quarterback rating either. So the question is for DFS, are we going to pay this much for him on week 1? Well, I'm not sure yet, but let's get this out of the way now. There's going to be regression from him this season. Not to say he won't have an amazing season, and chances are he will put up the best overall numbers throughout the season, but QBs generally don't repeat 50 touchdown seasons. The Chiefs' offense as a whole is absolutely insane. I mean, the whole offense as a whole is going to regress a little bit, but that doesn't mean they can't be the best offense in the league again and put up great numbers. Just last season was just absolutely awesome. I mean, they got great options: Kelsey, Hill, Mahomes. They lost Kareem Hunt, but they have Damian Williams, who looked pretty good. Darwin Thompson looks pretty good. Sammy Watkins is on there. And they got some good secondary options, too. But this matchup is in Jacksonville versus Jacksonville, obviously, and it's definitely not an ideal one. Jacksonville was 6th DVOA versus the pass last season and only allowed 17 DraftKings points per game to QBs last season. And they only allowed 209 yards per game and only 1.06 touchdowns, which were all pretty low compared to the rest of the defenses. So these are some pretty tough numbers. And despite all this, the Chiefs still have the highest implied total of the slate at 27.75, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles, and the highest Vegas total overall at 51.5. And it's a pretty close line, too, at only -4, so Vegas is kind of seeing this as more of a back-and-forth shootout. I'm going to assume that's in respect to the Jags' addition of Nick Foles. So what do we do here? Am I going to play him in cash games? I'm probably not going to play him in cash games because I do think there's some better, cheaper options that will be high-owned that will allow us to spend up at other positions. But for GPPs, I think he's fine because we all know the upside of the Chiefs' offense, and Patrick Mahomes is obviously awesome. And the next guy I want to talk about is Famous Jameis at home versus the 49ers. Last season, the Tampa Bay QB group combined was near the best in the league for fantasy when they had Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston subbing in and out basically. And then they went ahead and added Bruce Arians as their head coach, which is great for the passing game and offense as a whole. So they're going to be a lot of vertical passes. They did lose Djax and Humphreys, but there's still a lot to like here. Vegas expects this to be a decently high-scoring game with a total of 48.5. And the 49ers were 27th DVOA versus the pass last season. They gave up 20 DraftKings points per game, 250 passing yards, and the most touchdowns per game at 2.19. Also, the least interceptions per game by a ton at only 0.13 per game, which is great because Jameis makes a ton of boneheaded plays and throws a lot of picks. So that's a good news for him. And they have lots of talent on this offense with Big Mike, the emergence of Chris Godwin, who some people are saying may be better than Mike Evans. A lot of respectable people are saying that he could be close to him. I say get out of here with that. Mike Evans is obviously the better player. Now, Chris Godwin might get more receptions, but Mike Evans is obviously has the most upside of all the guys on that offense. And then we have the star potential of O.J. Howard as well, and I think he's going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks on the slate, and it's for a good reason. So I do like Jameis Winston a lot. He's not the most expensive quarterback, but at $6,600, I will say that is a little expensive, but I do think there's plenty of upside here. And the next guy I want to talk about is, Baker Mayfield. I should let you guys know now, I am a huge Browns fan, so obviously I love Baker Mayfield. I know a lot of people don't right now because he's kind of talking in the media about Daniel Jones, but I think that's getting a little blown over out of proportion, but that's not important right now. But versus the Tennessee Titans, I'm not really that interested. The Titans do have a respectable defense. I do think the Browns should score some points. They have, on paper, they have one of the best offenses in the league right now, if not the tops with Kansas City and the Rams and the Saints. But versus Tennessee, I'd rather go into a more friendly. I'd rather attack a more friendly defense that gives up more points per game to quarterback position. Although I do think he's going to carry a little bit of ownership because the Browns are the new shiny toy of the NFL, and Baker Mayfield's pretty good. And we got Odell, Landry, Njoku, tons of talent, but just not someone I'm really targeting this week. There's going to be weeks where we want to use him, but right now I'm going to pass on that. So let's talk about Russell Wilson. I don't mind him, but I don't absolutely love him either due to the fact the Seahawks love to run the ball, and they are a 9-point favorite in this game versus Cincinnati. But what I do like, though, is the Bengals defense is extremely soft versus the pass. They were 25th DVOA versus the pass, allowed 22.9 points per game to the quarterback position, 282 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns per game. So these numbers are all bottom of the barrel. And I do have more interest in Chris Carson than I do using Russell Wilson, but we all know how incredibly efficient Russell is, and it wouldn't surprise me if he has one of those games where he has less than 20 pass attempts, but he ends the game with like 3 touchdowns because he was just incredibly efficient last year. He's got Tyler Lockett, and I mean, that's kind of really it, but he's just an efficient guy. He seems to get in the end zone. I mean, it's kind of at an absurd pace last season, so it's probably going to come down, but Russell Wilson's efficient. It's a really good matchup. And they should win the game and put up some points versus the Bengals. So I don't mind if you want to use Russell Wilson. He's not really a cash game guy for me because I'd rather get a guy with a lot more passing attempts. But I do think he is a little interesting. Then we have Jared Goff at 6,200 versus the Panthers. And I don't have a ton of love for him, but he should go under-owned. And I do think the Rams, I don't think they are. They're obviously an elite offense. They have the 3rd highest implied total of the slate. And if they are cautious with Gurley, which they should be, there might be some extra pass attempts here. Now, I know the Super Bowl was very, very ugly for Jared Goff, so I think that's going to be sour in people's minds, especially the casual fan that's like, I don't want to play Jared Goff. He sucked in the Super Bowl, but, obviously we're a little bit smarter than that. We got to look past that. He's had some pretty good games in his career. And the Panthers weren't not that good versus quarterbacks last season. They allowed over 20 points per game and were 24th DVOA overall versus the pass. So if you want to go with a little Rams stack versus the Panthers, I don't really think they're going to have much ownership, and they have as much upside as anybody in the league. So don't mind going with Jared Goff there. And then we have, let me see, Lamar Jackson, I believe, is next. Yeah, Lamar Jackson at 6,000. So just know now, I think he sucks, and I don't really think he's a very good quarterback. But that doesn't mean he can't be great for fantasy. He's going to run the ball a lot, and he has some decent passing upside versus Miami, who was 23rd DVOA versus the pass last season and allowed over 20 DraftKings points per game to them. So here's the thing with Lamar. There's a lot to love with his legs, especially earlier in the season, where there's no wear and tear on them with all the hits I imagine he's going to take if he doesn't start sliding. His passing is yet to be desired, but obviously he can improve. And, he does offer us a safe floor with his rushing upside, and I think he garners quite a bit of ownership at that price versus Miami. And the Ravens played at a very high pace last season, so that's also good for fantasy. And Carson Wentz is next at a really nice price at 5,700. I like Wentz and the Eagles this season, and I think they can go far. I'm a big believer in Wentz's talent, and he just needs to stay healthy. But believe it or not, the Eagles are tied with the Chiefs in terms of the highest implied total at 27.5. That was kind of shocking to me initially. The problem is, though, they are massive favorites at -9, and this game could get off hand versus the Redskins, who look like they could be one of the worst teams in the league this season. I know it's not really much, but man, the Browns absolutely steamrolled their defense on the first drive of preseason without Odell and Landry on the field. And I like the Eagles' offense as a whole, as they have a lot of good options with Jeffrey, Ertz, Goddard, Howard, Sanders, and the new addition of Deshaun Jackson, which is very important for that offense. So I do think Carson Wentz is in a pretty good spot. He should be able to gain some ownership at only 5,700, and yeah, I think he's a fine play if you want to use him. Sorry, just grabbing my notes. I have all my notes down here. And yeah, so next guy I want to talk about is Kyler Murray at 5,600. So here's the big one of the week. Kyler Murray. I'm not the biggest Kyler guy, but this offense should be improved. He had a pretty good preseason week 1, but week 2 was not pretty whatsoever. Twitter was kind of going nuts. Twitter was going nuts his first week saying how good he was, and then the second week everyone was kind of backtracking like, oh man, he's not looking too hot. So we'll have to see how it goes the rest of the preseason, but I don't really think it's a big deal. It's his second NFL game. You really can't even call it a game because he's not playing the whole game. So he's not going to be perfect, but I do love the price and matchup versus Detroit. The Lions were 31st DVOA versus the pass last season, and just overall, they don't have a very good defense. I think he may be the highest owned QB of the slate in cash and GPPs due to the matchup and he's the new shiny toy of the NFL, especially for casual fans, because there's a ton of casual fans who play NFL DFS compared to other sports like NASCAR and MLB. So that's my opinion on Kyler Murray. I think he's fine, especially for cash if he's going to be that high owned. He offers us plenty of upside at 5,600. Cardinals should have a new and improved offense, and I mean he's really cheap. He's got upside. He can run the ball too. So really nothing not to like besides for Murray, besides just him being a rookie. And then Kirk Cousins is the last guy I want to talk about. He's the last guy on my list last guy on my list, as he draws a pretty favorable matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons, who were terrible versus quarterbacks last season, albeit they did have a lot of major injuries, so I would assume it's going to improve some. But over 23 points per game given up, which is most in the league, 29th DVOA, and over 2 touchdowns per game to the position. Kirk has a ton of talent around him with Diggs, Thielen, and Cook. But I will say the direction of this offense isn't trending the right way for Kirk in the passing game, as they're on a path to running the ball more. So it's a big boost for Dalvin Cook, which we'll get into in the next video. I love Dalvin Cook for week 1. He draws an excellent matchup at a good price, but that's not important at the moment. But still, there's a lot of talent on this offense, and he's only 5,500, so we really don't need much for value here, and I'm going to assume he's going to throw a touchdown or two. So 5,500, I think that's fantastic value there, and he might even be a little bit safer than Murray because he's unproven. Anyway, guys, that's the first video for week 1. This is just the early looks, so just wanted to get out an early video. So for those of you who were just curious and just couldn't wait for a video, wanted to get it out, and I was really excited to do a video too, so I didn't want to wait much longer. But again, all of this, my whole entire cheat sheet, or yeah, it's if that's what you want to call it, model, cheat sheet, whatever, is available on Patreon. I'm going to be doing a lot of extra stuff when it comes week 1, tiered rankings, all that good stuff. Maybe even a live stream where you can ask me all the questions. Slack chat's all there. You can ask me all the questions you want. Hang out in the chat. It should be a good time. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos. And I wish you guys the best of luck when it comes to week 1.